Ever feel like great ideas are just random? That they just strike some people like lightning? Well, what if I told you there's a science to it? A way to turn that messy, frustrating hunt for inspiration into a process you can actually rely on. So let's dive in and figure out how to hack your own brain for some truly brilliant ideas.
Oh man, we've all been here. You know the feeling? You're staring at a blank document, a silent meeting room, an empty whiteboard, and nothing. It's that paralysis, right? That feeling of being completely and totally stuck. It's universal, but guess what? It's also totally solvable. I love this analogy because it's so perfect. Think about it. You wouldn't go to the grocery store for a week's worth of meals without a list, would you? You'd just wander the aisles and come home with, I don't know, a bag of chips and a fancy candle, but you'd forget the milk. It's the exact same thing with ideas. Without a plan, we're just wandering. And that plan, that shopping list for our brains, that's brainstorming. Now, I know, the word brainstorming gets thrown around a lot, but it's not just some corporate buzzword for thinking really hard. It's actually a formal process with a pretty cool history.
So there's the official definition. The two key phrases to really zero in on here are formal method and specific problem. What that tells you is that real brainstorming isn't chaos. It's structured creativity. It's a tool that's designed to get you from point A to point B.
Yeah, this whole idea actually goes way back to the 1940s. An ad executive named Alex Osborne needed a better way to get his team to come up with creative campaigns. He originally called it thinking up. It wasn't until his book came out like 20 years later that the term brainstorming really blew up. So this isn't some new trend. It's a method that's been tested for decades.
Okay, but for this method to actually work, you have to follow the rules. And honestly, this is the most critical part. It's not about the activity itself. It's about the mindset you bring to it. It's about deliberately splitting your brain into two different modes of thinking. And this, right here, is where most people get it totally wrong.
All right, lean in for this one because this slide is the secret key to everything. This is what I mean by two different modes. Most of the time, in school and at work, we're trained for convergent thinking, finding the one right answer to the problem. Brainstorming, though, runs on the complete opposite fuel, divergent thinking. The goal isn't to be right. The goal is to generate as many possibilities as you can, period. You're just exploring, not analyzing.
And that leads us to our first rule, which feels kind of wrong, but you have to trust it. Go for quantity, not quality. Seriously, your only job in this phase is to create the longest list of ideas you can possibly imagine. It's a brain dump. Don't stop to ask if an idea is good or bad or just plain ridiculous. Just get it down on paper.
And to do that, you have to follow this next rule, which is absolutely essential. You cannot judge the ideas as they come out, not your own and definitely not anyone else's. Criticism is the #1 creativity killer. The second someone says, "Oh, that'll never work," the whole process just shuts down. That bad idea might be the very thing that sparks a brilliant one in someone else. You have to make it a safe zone.
Because that feeling of safety, that's what leads directly to this. You have to encourage the wild ideas. This is blue sky thinking. No limits, no budgets, no buts. Real innovation almost never comes from safe, boring, predictable thoughts. It comes from that one idea that's a little out there, the one that makes everyone laugh until someone else says, "Wait a minute."
Okay, so once you've got those rules of engagement locked in your mind, let's look at a few practical tools. Think of these like different wrenches in your toolbox. You wouldn't use the same one for every job, right? Same thing here. First up, we've got a true classic, and for good reason, mind mapping. This is just an incredible visual technique that's perfect for exploring all the different angles of a topic. It lets you see connections your brain might otherwise miss. The process itself is super simple. You just pop your main topic right in the center of a page, and then you start drawing lines outward with related ideas. Then you branch off of those ideas, and so on. It's not a list, it's more like a spider web. And that visual approach is so powerful because it kind of mimics how our brains naturally connect thoughts. So, if mind mapping is about going wide and exploring outwards, our next tool, the 5 whys, is all about digging deep. This technique is fantastic for getting to the real root cause of a problem, instead of just putting a band-aid on the symptoms. And again, the process is simple, but it's so effective. You just state the problem, and then you ask why. You get an answer, and then you ask why about that answer. You keep going, about 5 times. By that 5th why, you've usually cut through all the surface-level stuff and found the actual issue you need to fix. But what if you're in a group and you've got 1 or 2 people who just dominate the whole conversation? How do you get ideas from everyone else? Well, that is where brainwriting comes in. It's a silent, totally democratic way to brainstorm as a group.
The beauty of this method is that it completely levels the playing field. Everybody gets a piece of paper and you just write down your ideas and then pass it to the next person. Everyone gets to contribute without being talked over or feeling shy. It is a fantastic way to pull out those brilliant thoughts from the quieter, more introverted members of your team.
So all of these rules, all of these tools, they all lead to one single fundamental takeaway. If you remember absolutely nothing else from this explainer, please remember this.
This quote nails it. And it's not just the writing process, it's the most important part of almost any creative or problem-solving process. Why? Because this is where you create all your raw material. Without a big pile of ideas to work with, everything that comes after is going to be weaker.
This right here is the golden rule. You have to separate the two phases. Step 1 is the divergent phase, the creative, messy, no rules brain dump where you generate everything you possibly can. Then, and only then, do you move to step 2. That's when you switch your brain back into that critical, convergent mode to analyze and pick the best ideas. The real magic happens when you never ever let these two steps mix.
So there you have it. You have the science, you have the rules, you have the tools. Your next breakthrough isn't going to come from some random bolt of lightning. It's going to come from a process. So your next great idea is already waiting for you. The only question is, what problem will you tackle first?